did not work, and we are seeing how God spared this country from having those same policies implemented nationwide. It is such a stark difference from what we're seeing even with President Trump before he's taken office, and we'll get into that in just a minute. But I want to welcome my friend Mario Murillo. And Mario, you are fresh from, I think it's Colorado, where you had your premiere. I want you to talk about that as well, but welcome, my friend.
Thank you. And I will get to our movie, which we premiered in Colorado. But I wanted to get to your point that you just made for all of us, the listeners. We want to thank the Firepower Army, which continues to grow and expand. And we thank God for the hundreds of thousands of you that have been a part of our audience. And I want you tonight to especially share this. We want to look at this fire from another perspective. I want to throw it out immediately. Number one, this fire is not out, and there's no telling how long it's going to last. It just feels like every time they get the upper hand, something happens to expand it. The other thing we want you to know is that when it's all said and done, this will be probably the greatest American disaster in terms of fire, which is a startling statement, because even when we went to Paradise, California, after it was totally destroyed, we were the first group to come in there with a tent, and it looked like Dresden in Germany after the firebombing. The whole city was gone. This is even worse, and it continues to baffle people how fierce and widespread it is. But was human error involved? It's in the middle of it. We'd love to blame the winds. We'd love to blame the environment. We'd love to blame global warming, as the woke are so want to do. But this is clearly the end of woke, because California is seeing, without a doubt, the obliteration of this philosophical ideology that caused this. You said it. DEI hires. You said it. Incompetence. And surely we have to look at it from a biblical perspective, and even say, Todd, why are we talking about this? Think about that for a second. Right. Why are we talking? Everybody's talking about this. Why are you talking about it? Because we're watching the end of something, and whatever doubt we have about a philosophical approach to governance, this seals the deal. This is where Karen Bass, mayor of LA, needs to go. Gavin Newsom, governor of California, needs to go. Now, they need to resign. This is it. And this time, they're in incompetence from an evil point of view, because there was a deliberate choice to ignore the obvious, because they thought woke was so popular that they could get away with erasing the fire trails, not doing anything about the undergrowth, and realizing that it was a time bomb, and then lying about it. And that is why I want to play the first video right off the top, if we could. So let's roll that right now.
Neighborhoods wiped off the map. Homes reduced to piles of ash. Every day it gets more grim. And the death toll keeps rising. 24 are now confirmed dead, and many more still missing. Forecasters estimate the damage to be more than $250 billion. This would be costlier than Katrina. And the Palisades fires are still only just 13% contained. Wind gusts are predicted to kick up, and firefighters are bracing for explosive fire growth. This isn't over yet, and the looting isn't stopping. At least 29 fire looters have been arrested, including these 4 fiends caught in Santa Monica. One thief breaking into homes in Pacific Palisades was dressed as a fireman when he was apprehended. Nothing is sacred. Jewels, precious heirlooms. Even someone's Emmy was stolen. And remember the guy with the blowtorch last week who was lighting fire to Christmas trees and garbage cans? Turns out he was an illegal alien. His name's Juan. Bandits and arsonists are preying upon this devastated community while it's still smoldering. And residents are gripped by fear and rumors. Here's actress Whitney Cummings.
This is a real text that I just received from a friend of mine about the fires. Some of the neighbors caught a guy setting more fires on the back of our hill. They chased him away. They called 911. I think they caught the guy recently in Woodland Hills trying to put gasoline in sewers. It's happening all over.
Police haven't confirmed this, but there's a sense of every man for himself in Southern California. Some more fortunate families are hiring private firefighters, and actor David Spade's announcing bounties on arsonists.
Okay, I'm going to have you comment on this. You're from Los Angeles. What does this do to you when you see these things, Todd? What does it do to you? These are neighborhoods you've been in. They're houses you are personally familiar with that are gone.
Well, and I'll tell you, Mario, we've had phone calls with folks that we know very well. Some in the ministry actually have had their entire house destroyed. I have several friends that have lost their homes. So this is very near and dear, very personal. And the fact that this could have been prevented, we think about President Trump when he visited in his last term and walked. I remember because we lived only miles away from where that fire was. He walked the area and then afterwards made the same remarks that he's making now, that, here's the way to fix the challenges that they're having and to prevent and to prepare, and gave excellent advice. It was not taken, instead just the opposite. And so, here's what's happening, though, Mario, and this is why this is so epic. I'm also getting phone calls and hearing conversations of folks that are telling me, look, my most liberal neighbors, I mean, I'm talking people that like campaign for the DNC, that, the biggest donors, they are murmuring and speaking amongst each other and saying, we want Republican leadership in California. I mean, that's how crazy. This is not a conspiracy. They are saying this. This is proven. This is fact. And that's because they're so just completely disenfranchised by the leadership in California, or the lack of leadership. You got Newsom. I don't know if you saw that viral video, but there was a woman that ran up to him and he's saying he's on the phone with the president. Well, it turns out he wasn't on the phone. Then he changes it. Well, I'm trying to get a hold of him. Apparently President Biden wasn't answering. Shocker. And so this woman says, well, I want to hear the conversation. I want to hear the conversation. This is what the people are feeling like out there. They are fed up. They don't trust the government. They don't want things to continue the way that they've been. You see the DEI you mentioned, Mario. I mean, the LA Fire Department, the chief, she was so concerned about the gay parade, more concerned about that and fire hydrants that are in the LGBTQ colors than actually getting the department prepared for this season. So there's so many different levels that we're going to discuss, and I can't say it all in one comment, but there's a lot to this.
The scary timing about this, Todd, is the fact that long before this fire, I was asked to come to Southern California, where a tiny group of influential leaders and people and pastors said, we want you to do a crusade, a tent crusade. Well, fitting that in was, my wife and I, we prayed about it and we thought, we currently have been asked to 73 American cities to do tent crusades. Can you imagine? I never even imagined at this time in my life that I would ever live to see that. So I thought, how do I even fit this in? And it became very clear I was to go. So I'm going to be there at the end of the month. But I think it's time to say something that none of the other people who are talking about this fire are saying. Get ready, because here it comes. This is about honoring immorality and taking the moral restraints off of people. Now, how do we see that? First of all, with woke, you have a set of values where optics mattered more than reality. And we changed science for the sake of our ideology. And so fire trails that were dotted all the hills. You remember that. You grew up in the area.
Absolutely.
You remember, Todd, those fire trails. They were everywhere.
Yes. We used to go hike up in them. Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, all gone. All gone because they were concerned about a certain non-existent little something or other they thought it would damage. It had nothing to do with reality. But it looked good because every time you can make a feverish environmentalist feel like you're doing something, then you look better. So they took the money away from the fire department. They bragged about how they weren't going to waste water anymore, and we're going to divert it to save the salmon. We're going to divert it to do this. Right. And then later on, it will show how they lied about the water being in the reservoir. that they said, oh, there was water in it. You'll see the proof that it wasn't. But I want to make this point. They broke the laws of God. Folks, they broke the laws of God. First on marriage, then on gender, then on whether or not criminals should be arrested for shoplifting. And then they kept going on and on in the drumbeat of legalization, of taking moral shame away. And what do you get? You get runaway fire. You get people looting houses. You get people starting fires during a fire. And that cannot be, you can't say that on the 7 o'clock news. You can't say that in any kind of, we'll say it right here. And it means something to look at the negligence that is rooted in the woke ideology. And one thing that we're going to prove, in all socialist systems, there's a wealthy elite that emerge that deceive the masses and say, we're going to give you equality. We're going to give you racial equality, identity equality. We're going to give you all of this stuff. And all they're doing is making themselves wealthy. The epitome of it was the mayor is on vacation during a fire. Gavin Newsom was in the French market during while he was telling everybody to stay home. He and his little group were, and that's the way it works, folks. That's the way it works. These leftist politicians are self-serving, immoral liars, and that's all there is to it. And we can't blame the wind. We can't blame the environment. This was man-made disaster. COVID, man-made disaster. And when will the Americans, and somebody said to me just the other day, say, quit politicizing the fire and quit politicizing COVID. I said, I'm not. I'm moralizing it. Look at me. Moralizing is different than politicizing. Because when you moralize, you distinctly identify evil, and you distinctly go back to the Bible and the Word of God, and what you say is, this is what happens to society that rejects God's Word, that shakes its fist at God's moral law and lives by their feelings, their glands, and by deceiving the simple people of society with these high-sounding words. And you're lying, and this is what you get, Todd. And it's got to break your heart, man, because I know how deeply embedded you were in the Christian community in Hollywood, and this is, they just said a number. It went over my head. He said $250 billion. That's $250 billion.
That's right. Yep.
Yep. And they were going to save the planet. And the most ironic part to me, I'm getting caught up in this. Many of the laws that allowed them to neglect the fire trails, the underbrush, and the threat of fire was policies associated with clean air. They were trying to make the air clean. And what is the air like over Los Angeles right now, Todd?
Isn't that ironic? Yeah, isn't that ironic? Didn't they send I think they sent some fire equipment to Ukraine. You know what I'm saying? So yeah. What? Talk about, and that's probably what Joe Biden's going to do as a response to this. Let's send some more money to Ukraine. Here's what's interesting, Mario, is just like that, these same leftist celebrities stopped talking about gun control. Didn't that just go away right away? When their homes, all of a sudden there's no first responders to respond because they're inundated, and it's the homes that had the guns that were protected from the looters. Isn't it amazing how all these policies that they've been pushing so strongly just go right out the door? It's like when they have the climate change summits and they all fly there in their private jets. It's just unbelievable. So anyways, this is really, LA is never going to be the same from this. This is going to be a very historic and, a game changing moment. I think, Mario, that more people are going to leave California and leave Los Angeles after this. I think this was the final straw to a lot of folks. my friend Jack Hibbs, Pastor Jack Hibbs, did a good video on this, but he was saying, we pay the highest taxes. We pay the highest for gasoline. Their school system is like number 30 something in the nation. Their education is horrible compared to the rest of the country. For the highest taxes, highest gases, they pay all this money, and yet folks found out in one of the most prestigious communities in the country, highest real estate value, they go to use the hydrants, the fire hydrants, and there's no water. The reservoir that's supposed to have the water funneling to these systems, empty, and then there's, I think we're going to play in just a minute, lies about this where they said it wasn't. It's crazy. And, I hear the talks of the Hollywood people because I have a lot of friends that are in the industry. And this is a very leftist. I mean, everybody knows this. If you're a conservative, you're kind of closeted, although this is changing. And now, though, I think people are more emboldened to start speaking out. And I think this is going to be very game changing for Hollywood, for the future of Hollywood. There's a lot of things that are going to be shifting. And maybe this is leading into what the Lord, even though I don't think the Lord he doesn't cause these things, but I think this is going to lead to a great move of God. I think this is going to lead to more people coming to know him, more people getting on fire for him, and a great harvest. I think the harvest is ripe in this area, Mario, to your point. I got to ask you a question just because I know that a lot of our viewers are asking this question, but do you feel, this is a big question online, was this judgment on that area? Because a lot of people want to know that. What do you think about that?
Okay, it is judgment but in context. Let's talk about judgment. If you eat too much sugar, you're judged by diabetes. If you're consciously aware of choices you make, they lead to consequences. So you can call that judgment. If you defy the law of gravity, you're going to get instant justice. So when you look at the fact that here we are in a state that is celebrated immorality. Now, I'm not going to say God started this fire because they were practicing immorality. I'd rather look at it in another way. The Bible talks about turning you over to a reprobate mind, or a mind that is to do what is not convenient, the Word of God says. So it's insanity to live in a state with a natural water shortage, leave the undergrowth to grow, get rid of the fire trails because you think you want to live out your worship of the creation, and the same mentality that lays down in front of traffic in order to stop it, to protest, the Greta Thunberg mentality. This pervades Los Angeles. And it came back to haunt them. And they picked leaders who were willing to take this ideology and go against reason, against logic, and in madness. Now, we'll begin with an elected official, Karen Bass, mayor of Los Angeles. Let's roll that tape right now.
Los Angeles is battling through the worst fires in its history. At least 24 people have tragically been killed. More than 150,000 have been forced to flee their homes. 10,000 structures have been completely destroyed, including some of the country's most expensive real estate. And when the fires broke out, LA Mayor Karen Bass was in Africa. And when she returned, instead of answering critical questions from reporters, she chose to just ignore those questions and stay silent.
Do you owe citizens an apology for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor? Have you nothing to say today? Can you back up? I appreciate it. Have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position? Madam Mayor, have you absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today who are dealing with this disaster? No apology for them? Do you think you should have been visiting Ghana while this was unfolding back home?
Karen Bass had a choice in that moment. Instead of fronting up and showing leadership, she ran away. Who else would like to know why she approved an $18 million budget cut for the LA Fire Department? Why a major reservoir, which holds 117 million gallons of water, has been sitting empty for almost a year, which meant that smaller tanks were quickly exhausted and fire hydrants were running dry as firefighters risked their lives trying to save homes. And why did Karen Bass have nothing to say as the people of Los Angeles were going through the most horrifying experience that was made worse because of the government's mismanagement?
You see, I want to jump on this. As a ministry, if someone gives me a gift and they say to me, we want you to use this to buy a tent or buy chairs or to rent a facility in the fairgrounds, that's what's known as a designated gift. And we avoid that. Right. We try to train our partners. Look, just give us the funds to win the lost and let us exercise our expertise in where to best put it so that it has the greatest result. Now, look at your property tax statement, California. Look at your property tax statement and you'll see there's designations for public school and for fire. Now, if I were to take a fund that was designated and spend it inappropriately, the IRS could take away my nonprofit status. If a donor said he didn't use this for what he said he was going to use it. That's why we are very meticulous. The mayor of LA took property tax money for fire and spent it on something else. And some of it was for illegal people who were there illegally. Now, I want you to imagine how above the law you feel when you do something like that. And now it's come back to haunt her. But everyone needs to understand this is leftist thinking. It says, you know, the law applies to other people, you little people out there, but not to us. And this is devastating when you think about it. Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, you know, Mel Gibson, I don't know if you caught the interview. He did a couple interviews. I think he was on Joe Rogan, but he was also on Fox, I believe it was. And somebody was interviewing him. And he said, it almost seems, I mean, he was laying out the incompetence, like what we're talking about. He says, you know, if it almost seems this was done on purpose. It almost seems like they set this all up because, I mean, how could you be that incompetent, right? I mean, it's like my 5-year-old could probably run the city better than some of these folks. That's pretty amazing to say, but that's the truth. Just like how the left withdrew from Afghanistan, by the way. So the thing here is that then you have to start looking in context. I'm going to go, I don't have a tinfoil hat here, but if I did, maybe I put it on right now because let's just think of something. So, you know, you have a new year. We're leading up into the inauguration of President Trump, right? We're now days away. Okay. But we had the twin terror attacks on the first day of the new year, which, by the way, right after lightning hitting 4 iconic buildings. That's just interesting. But, you know, so you have the terror attacks, which there was some suspicious stuff with that, too. Then just only like a week later, Mario, these fires start, happening. And what's interesting, first of all, this is America's second largest city. Okay. So we have to understand that California is the 5th largest economy in the world, by the way. Okay. And so you have this, it looks like, I mean, you got people with blowtorches being caught around the city. You got arsonists being, found around the city. I just want to present, and I want to see what the viewers think about this, what the Firepower Army thinks. But what do you think that this was intentional? Was there an attack that could have happened to our second largest city? Do we just witness another level of some asymmetrical 5th generational warfare? Could that potentially be what's happening here? These questions aren't really being asked. And then you have the politicians out there like Newsom skating around everything. And all of a sudden, here's another one I want to lay out there, Mario. They talk about these smart cities. This looks a lot like Maui, by the way. Can I just be honest?
Right.
It looks a lot like Maui. And then you got these, the smart cities and all of a sudden we hear they're going to rebuild back better. Does that sound familiar? So there's just a lot. I think people have their antennas up. And I think people with discernment are like, there's probably more to these stories.
And with all things done in the name of evil and in the name of greed, it backfires. See, and one of the things that's happening that is backfiring is that a lot of people that would never have ever been voices to say we need to change our government, we need to change our political system, because every year, every election rather, Los Angeles votes the same way for the same people for the same reasons. And I think that if that doesn't change now, then I got to tell you, I don't have any hope for that mindset. If you're watching and you're going to take me wrong, God bless you. I love you. But if you're a Democrat in Southern California and you can't see how DEI and woke and leftism and socialism brought about this firestorm, then I don't know what to think. I don't know, to me, it is absolutely unimaginable that people aren't going to wake up and see that they've got to change this. They got to get rid of these people. And you know what? Even though we're still got a lot of time left, I would like to run this third video right now, because I think it illustrates what I'm trying to say, what we're both trying to say. So let's run that right now.
Filmmaker and author Justine Bateman, who lives in Hollywood Hills, joins me now. How are you feeling right now, Justine?
Hi. I'm pretty pissed, and I think a lot of people in Los Angeles are pissed. If you are going to run a city or run a state, you have to take care of the basics, and that's make sure that your fire and your police department are well funded. Make sure that you have, not only you have plans if there are emergencies in your area, you've rehearsed them, but also you have plans to mitigate the problems that you know are going to happen in that area. And for us, it's fire, earthquake, rain, and consequent mudslides. And if you're not doing everything you can to take care of those problems if they arise, then get out. You are useless to us. All those other things, all the other programs like Head Start and all of that, that's great for the community, that's after. If you can't cover the basics, get out of our city. You are useless to us. You are a liability, and you have destroyed people's lives because you didn't do your job. You didn't do what you were hired for. You didn't do what we pay you for, and you should resign out of shame and responsibility for the people whose lives you've destroyed right now.
Wow.
Now that is sanity, right?
Yes, it is.
I mean, yep, you can see it. Okay, what do you think she's representing in terms of the change in the mentality because of this fire? What do you think she represents?
She's representing the populace. She's representing the people. And this is where we're at right now. And, there's an opportune moment here from a political standpoint, okay, and from a cultural standpoint.
Yes.
If they can overwhelm the system in California like they did nationally with President Trump and get enough votes to oust this uniparty system, then they could see change. But there would have to be reform in the voting, Mario. I know well, and I know you know as well, that there is certainly corruption in California in the voting. There is a provisional voting where you can go to any precinct and you don't have to show ID. We know there's many, many illegals there. I know they say this type of thing doesn't exist, but I'm going to tell you, I worked on 2 campaigns very closely. And what I found is the night of the election, they call the race the minute the polls open. It's almost like, moments into the race, and it's always the same percentage. And, I was representing a gentleman that ran in a district in the San Fernando Valley, and he campaigned hard. He went to several mega churches in that area. And, you would think that his campaign would have at least made some, changes from the last candidate, right? Same exact percentage. I don't buy it. I'm just going to be honest. I don't buy it. I think there's corruption in the state. So there has to be reform. And that's really where it goes down to. And I know everybody in California is like, yes, we agree. That's the truth. So the fact of the matter is, with Donald Trump in, there's an opportunity now. And with this movement that's happening in our country, there's an opportunity. It may be the last opportunity for California, but we need to seize this moment. And the political atmosphere gives way for the spiritual atmosphere, the laws, the regulations, the curriculums, everything that's going on in that state. What you just shared a few moments ago, which is an excellent answer, by the way, that's all related. So the other side of this, Mario, is where the pastors say, we don't get involved. Listen, I went to a lot of prayer meetings in Los Angeles. I know most of the pastors. Okay. I've been to many of them. it was very culturally normal there to say, we don't get involved in politics. We don't speak about political matters. Can we finally put this to rest? Can we finally say, hey, this isn't political, this is spiritual, and actually get involved and be the church and be the head, not the tail? I think the people, the folks want this. It's the leadership that is still disconnected here.
Okay. And in all fairness to, the leaders, we're going to be as fair as we can to these criminals. Justine Bateman said, this is your job. You didn't do your job. All right, but let's go through it for a moment. Didn't your woke vote give them license to end up in this condition? Aren't these politicians acting out the seemingly assumed values and ultimate goals of DEI and woke? Mara, what do you mean? Okay, let's take the looting. Didn't you decriminalize shoplifting? Didn't you do that? What did you think was going to happen? When you take down the normal, decent human values and you remove them, what did you expect was going to happen? Now let's talk about property. You wonder why wasn't there a priority placed on private property to save it? Well, look at the California squatter law.
Right.
You know the law I'm talking about. Somebody could literally break into your property if you don't live in it. It's empty. They could break in there. And what did you have to go through to get rid of that squatter?
I know people that had him in there for years, Mario. I mean, I'm telling you, if they get mail at that address, that's it,
Yep. And think about what that means in terms of their attitude about houses. So now my house burned down and you didn't care. Well, you knew that when they didn't care when a stranger squatted in the property. They didn't care then. Why did you think they were going to care enough to set up the guardrails to keep civility and safety? Now, you can't tell me that you don't know a politician is okay with dangerous situations if they make lax laws. If they laxen laws, get rid of law and order, you're also getting rid of decency. You're getting rid of civility. And when Jesse Waters said in that first video we ran, he said, in LA, there's a feeling that it's every man for himself. And I want to say, Jesse, that's the way it's always been. They've just never had a fire to expose all of the flaws that were already present. Now, does that make sense to you, Tom?
100%. I mean, I was there during the LA riots. I was there during the Northridge earthquake. We've seen a few times where the first responders were inundated, and these guys are heroes. I'm not in any way diminishing what they do. The firemen and all the people that are out there, the police, they're on the front line. But it's the leadership. If you think of George Soros, he put in that guy gas cone or something like that. And that guy ruined that. I mean, it was already bad, but progressively over the years, it's got worse and worse and worse. And, just like up in Union Square in San Francisco, we've talked about this, Bloomingdale's left, Macy's left, all the high-end department stores left because they were getting basically looted on a regular basis. And I know the associates in some of these stores, they didn't feel safe, Mario. If there was a woman in one of these retail stores and there was like one or two people, they didn't feel safe because folks were coming in and doing these grab and runs. Anybody in LA knows what I'm talking about. My wife used to work at the Sherman Oaks Galleria. And they used to come in and take high-end purses and all this stuff. And it was like these mobs. And they knew that. Now, back in my day, when I was a young, when I first got into the retail and worked at like a Macy's, minimum wage many years ago, they had security and they could actually stop these people. But the laws in California have made it where now you can't even basically can't even touch these people. So they just make out with thousands and thousands of dollars of stolen goods. And you know who pays for that? The folks. And finally, the companies are looking at it and they're saying, you know what? It doesn't even make sense for us to have this store open in this area. This is how bad it's gotten. And, you tie that in with sanctuary cities and defund the police. What it is, in a word, is communism. And I think folks are finally starting to understand that this is communism. It's been communism for a while, but it's also another word, demonic. And that's why we as the body of Christ have to take this on and understand our battle is not against flesh and blood. It's against strongholds and principalities. People's lives have been affected. 24, I think, maybe more lives lost because of this incompetence, this demonic incompetence. And it's got to stop. And here we are once again, right?
You know, there is such this evil. Boeing, let's take the Boeing Corporation. They build jets, right?
Yep.
Always. Did it ever occur to you, or did it ever cross your mind in all the years that we've been aware of Boeing, that there might come a day where their planes weren't safe? That was the last thing on our mind. I never thought about that. Right. All these years that I've been flying on jets, over 55 years flying on commercial airliners. And I'm thinking, I never thought about Boeing suddenly making engines that could stop or doors that could fly off, the defects that we associate with bad automotive products, for example. But it was about DEI, and no one wanted to talk about it. We were hiring people on a criteria that was not, let's hire the best. Let's make sure they're good at what they do. And Los Angeles is the poster child for this. An infrastructure that literally does not work because we aren't hiring people who know how to work. We aren't hiring people who are competent. This is sin. This is wickedness. This is immorality, folks. And this is why all of those kind of woozy snowflake preachers of today are losing their audience because they're not addressing this. They're not saying, here's what's happening. The world of the future is not safe for your child because of the demonic evil that we are honoring as a system and a way of life. That's what's going on. Now, and it goes this deep. Todd, here's how deep it goes, all right? You could just, and the left and politicians that are on the left can lie. And they say to themselves, I can tell this lie with a straight face because the media is in our pocket.
Right.
And because we have successfully beaten down the resistance and we've framed it successfully that anyone who disagrees with us is racist, immoral, and hateful, and transphobic, homophobic, and all the phobics that they created. And we have a vivid example of this. There was a reservoir. They couldn't even get the name right. The politician couldn't even get the name of the reservoir right. And he said it was full of water when it had been empty for over a year. And he thought, I could just say that. So if you think I'm kidding, roll the tape right now. See it for yourself.
Your understanding, why did some of those, or so many of those fire hydrants simply run dry? Was there something to do with that 117 million gallon reservoir in the Palisades that was out of operation? What's your understanding? What's your initial read on this?
But my initial understanding is the reservoirs that the Palisades were drawing on, these 3 million gallon reservoirs, were full at the initiation of these fires. But they're intended, frankly, they have the capacity to put out homes that maybe house multiple houses, not if the whole town is up in flames, and most particularly not if the winds are so strong that aircraft can't fly. And this was the problem in the very beginning. The winds were hurricane force, up to 100 miles an hour winds. You can't fly in that, and you depend on being able to do water drops to put down those kind of flames. And I have to think there are probably hundreds of towns in California, thousands and thousands across the country that are in equally the same position, that if they had 100-mile-an-hour winds and a lot of dry fuel, they wouldn't have any more water than this community did.
Yep, those are the actual words straight from Adam Schiff's mouth. But I'll tell you, I'm really struggling with this one. You know, sure, that's what the top Democrats are telling us, but they're not exactly the most trustworthy sources, and I think there's a lot of merit to that claim. Meanwhile, we have actual on-the-ground reporting from Austin Jeffs at the Free Press, where he reports that allegedly the reservoir has been empty since February of 2024.
This was supposed to be the water to put out the Palisades fire. This is the Santa Ynez Reservoir. It's the water supply basically for the Palisades. When they first started fighting the Palisades fire, they ran out of water extremely quickly. Wednesday, 3 a.m., they were basically out. And there's been a lot of talk on why this happened. So how long has this reservoir been empty for? Since February of last year.
There it is.
Okay. All right. Let me hit on this. I have never seen such a confident liar in my life. And I know I'm going to get emails on this, and some of the grandmas that really love me are going to think I'm really being mean here. So I'm going to be very careful how I say this. What he said was so false and so misguided. I don't know where to begin. Number one, he lied. The reservoirs were not full. They were totally empty. Not only were they empty, they'd been empty for a year. And it's almost like pathological in your lying that something so easy to confirm as false that you'll say it anyway. Next, when he said, well, you know, it's hard for a reservoir full of water to put out a fire when the whole city is on fire. Adam, the whole city wouldn't have been on fire if there was water in that reservoir. That is amazing lapse of logic. Does he think that this fire instantaneously set the entire city on fire? We depend on the water drops. Oh, look, I know enough about wildfire management that to tell you this. The water drops are for areas that are inaccessible by roads. The fire trucks are for the roads where there are houses you can get to with hydrants. So this is nuts to say, well, it was the wind. Oh, well, you know, the wind may stop a plane, but the wind doesn't stop a fire truck. The fire truck wasn't stopped by the wind. It was stopped by there being no water in the hydrants because water was diverted by a woke government. And we just pray to the Lord that California will wake up and realize what evil incompetence is controlling them right now. I'm sorry, I took longer than I should have, but I wanted to get that out.
Those are very valid points. You're spot on. I mean, listen, okay, Israel has desalination plants, and those help Israel. Very similar topography, by the way, to Southern California, if you've been there. Very similar. So the deal is that California has many, many different reasons. First of all, they've been diverting the water, like you said, to save, what is it, the smelt fish? And, you know, so there's memes all over the internet about this. It's not funny, but I mean, this is what's going on. So you have the California aqueduct system, which is one of the most ambitious, historic, feats of our country. Putting that thing together, coming down from the Colorados and all the different areas, bringing that water into Southern California, which is essentially a desert until you get to the ocean, right? So the thing is that they have the water, they divert it to the ocean instead of these reservoirs, I guess, to save the environment. Meanwhile, to your point, it actually does the opposite. These citizens have been let down. And I think that's one of the most important points that we get today is that if they could do it in some of the highest end real estate, by the way, very left leaning people in this area. So this was their constituents. Okay. So you got their constituents in some of the highest real estate in the country, maybe even the world. Okay. Let, basically out to dry. When their houses are on fire, can't even get fire trucks to have water. And there's video after video online of people leaving their homes and the fire people are there. And these are heroes. I'm not saying anything against them, but they could do nothing because they didn't have anything. They didn't have any water at their disposal. And so Adam Schiff, and that Trump calls him Shifty Schiff. I mean, the guy, like you said, it's like every word that comes out of his mouth is a lie. But we need to get these career politicians out of here. Okay. These people that have lined their pockets. How is Nancy Pelosi, by the way, so wealthy? How are these people so wealthy on the salaries that they get? I'd like to know that. What happened to the bullet train in California? All the billions of dollars that they put into that. Where'd that thing go? They never completed the project. So this has been going on for decades. Isn't Gavin Newsom like the nephew of Pelosi? I don't know. But, something is going on here that's far more corrupt. And I think the Lord is allowing in all these things that we're seeing the emperor has no clothes. You got to see with Joe Biden, you got to see with Kamala Harris. Now you're seeing it with Newsom, who, by the way, is on deck to be the president on the left side as their candidate. So take note, folks.
Yep. Wake up. And here we'll play another video. Here's Kevin O'Leary making nothing but sense about the California fire situation. Let's roll that right now.
And conditions attached. I want to play this clip from Kevin O'Leary. He has a great idea about what should happen. Check this out.
I think every taxpayer in America, including those in California, would like to tie this aid to removing Newsom and Bass. Now, gone. Part of the deal would be, and I know Trump likes new ideas, here's one, not a dime until those two are whacked from their jobs.
Wow.
And that's it. Now, there's good news. I want to get back to Colorado with the time we have left, and I want to talk to you about what happened this weekend at Radiant Church when I was there that has national implications. Try to imagine what it would be like if you had 400 tent crusades going at one time. And that's exactly what's happening with us, Todd. I'm going to bring you in on this one. We premiered the movie I Am Living Proof. And I wasn't prepared for the reaction of the audience. What we did is we set up a cinematic theater inside of a church. What it would be like if you had the movie screen and you had all the sound. It costs a lot of money. And we did it so they would have the experience of the color and